Hi, I'm Cliff Sarin, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm with Martin Biggs from Spinnaker Support, and we're going to be talking about VMware and end of support of certain VMware products that I think you'll be interested in. So, Martin, what's been happening with VMware, but in particular with products that are sort of end of support this year or end of support next year? There is one, isn't there, that's not going to be around.
Yeah, so for those people, so vSphere 8 goes out of support next year, October, November next year. And that means you need to be running vSphere 9. And so there are a number of people still using perpetual licenses, whether under a support contract from Broadcom, which will not be renewed, and that will come up for renewal at some point this year, or they've gone off support completely. And maybe it's someone like Spinnaker who's providing an alternative to support. And then you've got those who've moved on to subscription under the belief that they can carry on using that software. They're now finding out that if they don't upgrade, and it's quite a substantial upgrade to go from 8 to 9, then that software will be out of support, even though they're spending a huge amount of money on subscription, having gone for that 3 to 4 times increase over the last couple of years.
So you can't get vSphere 9 on perpetual license.
That's correct. Yeah, and perpetual licenses haven't been sold since January 2024 anyway.
But vSphere 8 was the last version you could get on support.
Correct. That's right. That's exactly right. Yes.
So if you've been buying, I mean, part of the support buying the support contract is that you're kind of paying for the next version. You know, it's in the unwritten thing that happens in the economics of software development that you're helping support the product, meaning you're helping to support the next version of that product. That does seem slightly a bit skewed, really, in Broadcom's favour, I should say.
Oh, of course, yes. And you are now in a situation where, and this is true for so many different software publishers anyway, around are pushing it into support life. Unfortunately, what we're seeing here with the VMware and the Broadcom piece is happening a lot more aggressively. So, you know, the life of vSphere 8. So, there are a lot of people who came to our support are still on vSphere 7. vSphere 7, it works great. It's a great product. Not and people, we've been advising them only upgrade to 8 if there is some of the functionality you need, or maybe you need it working on a different hardware platform which is not supported under vSphere 7. So fine, that's all good. But we're now in a situation where they've gone to 8, and by next year, so it's only 1 year from, well, it's how many months? It's October 2027. So they've got a year and a half essentially to then move off onto vSphere 9. And it's a non-trivial change, Cliff. I mean, VMware underpins a huge amount of someone's IT operations, and to go through that transformation is not something you do without thinking about it. So it's quite galling that there isn't a longer support life cycle for customers going through this. It's a very, very rapid change.
Yeah, I don't know if I was speaking to you guys about this, but it does seem to me that if you if we look at something like Windows 10 end of support to Windows 11, you had 5 years. Windows 11, we don't know if this is a Windows 12, right? But when you have a 5 year lifespan, basically, for the operating system. Now, VMware is actually an operating system. It's an operating system. It's a hypervisor, which is effectively like an operating system that fits on top of the underlying operating system and the hardware, right? It's kind of doing that job. It's an operating system that fits on top of the hardware, gives you server virtualization. That's what it does. And you know, and I'm sure that when IT managers and admins were considering VMware in the way back when it was first, well, I mean, I was writing about this in the early 2000s, you know, the server virtualization, you know, server consolidation. And you think about that and say, well, yeah, this is just like real hardware. It runs an operating system, which you obviously run something on top of VMware, but it effectively is something that you don't have to think about, in the sense that my IT provider of that software, VMware in this case, would be there just like if it was a real operating system and support me all the way through. And that was the case actually for a long time, and that's why we do see older versions of these things still in existence.
Yeah, but the big change now, of course, is it's not just vSphere, which is the virtualization or the hypervisor and so on that you were talking about. VCF, which is the big bundle, includes virtualization of the network and the storage and everything else as well. So it's far more pervasive in an IT organization, and so the transformation is significant if you want to go through an upgrade. We've got into a crazy situation now, which we never expected. So we launched our offering to provide an alternative to VMware software support 2 years ago. And we thought it was going to be for a brief gap as people are moving off of perpetual licenses to subscriptions. We're now in a really surprising situation where people on subscriptions, which should be the future life, are having conversations with us because they're looking at not being able to go through that upgrade process and wanting support on VCF, on vSphere 8. And because they don't want to go for the upgrade. So in other words, they've paid a huge amount of money to go onto subscription on an annualized basis, and now they're genuinely looking at talking to someone like us to provide another service on top of that to keep that older version fully supported through 27, 28, and possibly 29. And it doesn't seem fair.
Okay, so I've just got one question for you, which is people are always concerned that running unsupported software, as in support from the main provider of that software, is a huge risk. Now, obviously, you've made a business out of providing third-party support, but now I know this is going to be a biased answer, so I'm putting a bracket around that to start with. I'm not saying how good is third-party support, but what does it offer, and your honest opinion on what it doesn't offer, so that when people make that decision of, well, we have to do this or we have to do that, they have a clear idea of what they're buying into, and if you're on the shortlist, what it is you're getting and what you're not getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so from a break fix point of view, the service is as close as identical as you can get. We've got similarly highly experienced engineers to do that. In fact, we argue and our customers testify the fact that we have more of those engineers per customer than the big vendors do, so we can be far more responsive. You can't get security patches from us because you need to have access to the source code, and we don't do that. And immediately that turns off a lot of people that get very nervous. The fact is, we have some of the most highly regulated organizations on the planet who are using their critical systems that we provide support for, including providing alternatives to security. So we talk about defense in depth, we talk about compensating controls, and working with regulators to demonstrate that these are equivalent, if not better, because you're helping clients harden against 0-day, whereas patches can only react to actual day instance. So it's a different paradigm. It's a change of religion, in fact, from the patching side. Fundamentally, what you don't get are new versions of the software. So if you're on a path where you want to stay current because you want new functionality, then you're not going to get that. And that's something where people need to start looking at their software strategy and deciding, is the huge cost of, in quotes, staying current valuable to you? Because there are other ways of modernizing the technology. So we don't just talk about VMware. VMware, yes, there are alternatives that you should be looking at. If you're going off of support, you're probably going off of the VMware journey, and you're going to decide, are you going to go back to VCF at some point in the future and go for that migration and the cost? You might do, it might be right for you, but you might be thinking about completely other technologies, whether they're other proprietary technologies, or they might be open, like OpenStack or Proxmox or whatever. And we'd be providing a path to help customers go on that journey. For ERP technologies, you might decide, actually, you never need to go for a significant upgrade, because you can look at modernization of the application incrementally by layering other services on top. And a lot of the big hypervisors allow you to do that, with the core being a legacy ERP, which we provide support for indefinitely. So there are different ways of doing this, but yeah, the big loss is the vendor's version of what they want you to do in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Martin, and thank you very much for tuning in.